Who's next?
Shantel Madden.
Miss Madden, if you'll step up here next to me, please, ma'am. All up here, please. Up here. You'll raise your right hand. Swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Thank you. If you have a seat right there, please, ma'am. If you'll speak up into that smaller black microphone right there in front of you, if you'll tell me both your first name and last name and spell them both.
Okay. Shantel Madden, Shantel Madden.
Thank you. Questions?
Ms. Madden, how old are you?
I'm 38 years old.
And are you married?
Yes, sir, I am.
And to who?
Frank Madden.
Okay. How long have y'all been together?
We've been married for 10 years, but we've been together ever since I was 16 and he was 17. We're high school sweethearts.
Okay. And how many kids do y'all have?
We have 3.
What?
I would like to say to the Stewart family, I'm sorry about what's going on here, and I wish.
Questions?
Are you employed, Ms. Madden?
Yes, I am.
Where do you work at?
The Regional Medical Center.
What's your education?
High school education, 12th grade.
Was Shanterrica the first person in y'all's family to go to college?
Yes, sir, she is.
Now, how long have you been at Regional Medical Center?
12 years.
What do you do there?
I'm a medical assistant.
How many children do you have?
I have 3 children.
And can you tell me their names and ages?
Shanterrica is 19, Letitia is 18, and Frank Jr. is 13.
Do you recall March the 2nd, 2011?
Yes, sir, I do.
And when I say March the 2nd, 2011, what's the first thing that comes to your mind?
It's the saddest and most terrible day of my life besides going through this trial.
Did you talk to Shanterrica that day?
Yes, sir, I did.
When would have been the first time you would have talked to her?
I talked to her that morning.
Okay. And would that be a regular occurrence between you and Shanterrica?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And how would that come about?
She was away from way at college, and I always called her to make sure she was up for school and ready to get her day started.
Okay. And did you talk to her again later on that day?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay. And I guess to get this in time sequence, were you a part of Shanterrica going to MTSU?
Yes, sir, I was. Me, her father, and herself.
Okay. And what made y'all decide that?
MTSU seemed like a pretty good school, and it had the majors the classes that she wanted to major in.
Do you know how it was decided for Shanterrica to live at Raiders Crossing?
Yes, sir. They sent us flyers and emails, and I got a couple of emails and some flyers, and I called them and talked to the manager there, and we decided from there.
Okay. And were you on the lease there?
Yes, sir, I was.
Why is that?
Because she was a minor, and they needed an adult signature.
Now, during the Shanterrica's first semester, which would have been, I guess, August through December of 2010,
Yes, sir.
would y'all come down here to visit with her?
Yes, sir.
And how often would you come?
2 to 3 times a week.
2 to 3 times a week?
2 weeks or every 3rd week.
Once every couple of
Yes.
2 or 3 weeks?
Yes.
Is that what you're saying?
Yes.
Now, would you go to the apartment when you would come down?
Yes, sir.
Did you ever have an opportunity to meet Mr. Ahuna when you came down to the apartment?
We never just met. We saw him and spoke to him. When we went the first time, we was bringing her back from break. Him and Miss Stewart was laying on the couch covered up, and they kind of got to Frank, and he asked me who was there, and I was like, I don't know, and I thought it was just Shanterrica and Miss Stewart in this apartment.
Okay, did that cause you any concern?
Yes, it did.
Why?
Because I always felt for her safety. It was her first time away from home.
It's being a mama?
Yes, being a mom, a concerned mother.
Yeah. After Christmas break, was there a time when you had a conversation with Miss Madden regarding Mr. Ahuna?
Yes, sir.
And was she already back at MTSU?
She came back she had been there about the middle of January.
Okay. Do you know when y'all would have brought her back in relationship to school starting back?
It was after Martin Luther King. I don't know the exact date.
That's when school started back?
Yes.
Okay, are you saying, my question to you is, do you know when you brought her back?
No, sir.
Okay. Do you know how much you would have brought her back in advance of the second semester starting?
Rephrase that.
You're saying, when you said Martin Luther King Day, what were you telling me about Martin Luther King Day?
Because it was out that, I think it was on a Monday. I think they was out of school that day, and we brought her back.
Okay, so you think that's the day you brought her back?
Yes.
At some point after that, did you end up having a conversation with Shanterrica regarding Mr. Ahuna?
Yes.
And can you tell me about that?
She called. I was at work on a Friday, and she called. And she was uncomfortable about him being there every day without Miss Stewart there. She didn't want to just tell me what happened. She kind of hesitated, and I asked her what happened, and she said she walked out the restroom and had a towel around her, and he was in the hallway.
Okay. And was that a problem?
That was a big problem, because she's never been at home without. She's always been at home with us.
Why, from your standpoint, why was that a problem?
Because he was a strange man, and then that wouldn't look right to someone else if she was standing there with a towel on and that she's standing there with someone else's boyfriend. What would someone else think?
What did you do as a result, or did you and Shanterrica talk about that?
I called the office.
Why?
Because I was concerned about my child. She didn't want me to call. She asked me not to call. She said she was going to talk to Miss Stewart herself.
Well, why'd you call them?
Because I'm a mother, and I didn't feel comfortable with him being there like that. And I didn't know I didn't know.
Okay. And so what did you say when you called the office?
I asked to speak with the manager, and I spoke with a young lady by the name of Jessica. I assumed she was the manager, and asked and was telling her about the problem. And she told me that by Shanterrica being 18, she had to call and speak with her.
Okay. So what happened next?
I told her, I said, well, I'm on the lease also, so I wanted to talk to her about it since I was on the lease and I was paying the bill and the rent. And she said she couldn't. She refused to talk to me. But after a while, she asked me what was the problem, and I told her about Mr. Ahuna being there all the time without Miss Stewart.
Okay. Did you talk anything else to her?
No, sir.
Okay. What happened next?
I texted Shanterrica because she was in class and told her to go talk to the manager when she got out of class. And she called me after she got out of class and asked me why did I do that she was going to talk to Tina herself.
Okay. What happened next?
I'm sorry. I should have never called. If I hadn't have called, we wouldn't be here today.
Tell me what happened next.
So she called and she spoke with Miss Jessica and they talked. And She called me later on and told me that she had spoke with Tina and everything was all right.
Okay. So were you still talking to Shanterrica in the mornings?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Were there other discussions or problems?
No, sir.
Did you bring it back up?
No, sir.
Okay. Does that take us to March the 2nd?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Now, you told me, when I asked you what do you remember about that day, I think what you told me is a call from Shanterrica, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And would that have been in the afternoon?
Well, I spoke to her that morning also, but that afternoon.
Okay, so before, if you're at one of the afternoon, before that, did you send a text message to your daughter?
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
And is this the text you sent?
Yes, sir.
Okay, can you read that?
Yes, sir.
Read it.
How are your eye feeling?
Okay, and why did you send that to her?
Because she has problem with her eyes, and she had glasses, but she lost them, and her eyes was paining.
Okay, and how do you know that?
Because she have always had eye problems, and when she told me about it, I knew what was going on.
Okay, had you done anything towards addressing an eye problem for her?
Yes, sir. I had made her eye appointment. She was going to the eye doctor when she come home from spring break.
I would ask the deputy mark this next number.
What is next number exhibit?
And then, Ms. Madden, did you send another message to her?
Yes, sir, I did.
Okay, and can you tell me what time you sent that message?
12:36.
Okay, and can you read it to us?
Did you go to the nurse
All right, and can you tell us what that means?
to go get something for her pain, her eye pain?
Okay. Is that still related to the eye? Is there an optometrist you had an appointment with?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I would ask the deputy mark this next number exhibit.
Sure.
Now, in the afternoon, you said you had a conversation with Shanterrica, is that right?
Yes, sir.
And did you call her or did she call you?
Well, I called her on my way home, and she called me back when she was walking to her room, going to her room, to her apartment.
Okay. Tell us about that.
She called and told me that her and Tina had got to fighting, and I asked her why. And she said, she really didn't give me an answer. She said she didn't know why they had got to fighting. And I told her to get her stuff and leave. And we was on our way to pick her up.
Where were you going to take her?
We was coming back to Memphis. We was going back to Memphis.
Were you trying to make a getaway for her?
No, sir.
Had something happened the week before that caused you and your husband to almost come down here?
Yes, sir. Well, my husband wanted to come down the week before. He said he had a strange feeling about something that wasn't right. And I told him, I said, well, we're going to pick her up Friday anyway. She's all right. I said, she'll call us when she need us. And he had a feeling. And if I had to let him come this Friday, this wouldn't have happened.
Has that been some contention, or whatever the word is for it, between you and your husband since this?
Yes, sir. It has been a big problem.
Had you have gotten to that Friday, was Miss Madden ever going to return to MTSU?
No, sir. She wasn't coming back to MTSU after spring break.
Okay, and what do you base that on?
It was a mother's intuition. I figured something was wrong.
Well, what had you, was she just going to drop out of school?
No, sir. I had applied to 3 other schools for her. She was going to go in school in Memphis.
Now, when you say that you learned of a fight, how many times did you talk to Shanterrica that afternoon?
Maybe 2 or 3.
Okay. And so is what you were just telling us about, that you knew about a fight and you told her you were coming, was that the first conversation?
No, that was later on after.
Okay. Tell me about the first one, if you can remember.
I called her that morning to wake her up.
Right, I'm talking about in the afternoon.
Oh, she was telling me she was heading to her apartment to wash some clothes for spring break to bring home.
Okay. And then the next time you talked to her after that, is that when you learned of the fight?
Yes, sir.
Is that the same conversation where Mr. Ahuna comes in?
That's after.
Okay.
That was a phone call after.
Okay. So is there anything else about the conversation where she told you about the fight? Anything else you remember about that?
No, sir.
Okay. Then your testimony is there was another conversation after that?
Yes, sir. That's when Mr. Ahuna come in.
Okay. Tell us about that conversation.
When she was on the phone with me, and I was asking her, did she get her stuff? And she told me, yes, ma'am, and she was getting ready to go, and I could hear him screaming at her, hollering at her, just screaming. And I told her, I didn't know what was going on, so I just told her to run, just run, run. And she was screaming. I said, run, just run. And she was hollering and hollering, and I could hear him hollering for her, and they was just hollering, and I didn't know what was going on.
So what did you do? Or how did that call end?
Her phone went dead. I pulled up. When her phone went dead, I tried to call my husband and tell him something was going on. He didn't pick up the first time, so when I got to the house, I pulled in the driveway. And I just started blowing my horn, and he called me back, and I told him, I said, something is wrong with Terrica. Something is wrong. Somebody's doing something to her. We got to get to her. And he said, what's wrong? I said, I don't know. Somebody's doing something to her. We need to get there. We need to get there.
Is that when you got in your car and drove to Murfreesboro?
Yes, sir.
Now, where did you go when you got to Murfreesboro?
He went to the police department.
And did you have an opportunity to talk to Detective Taylor?
Yes, sir.
And is that when you found out she'd been arrested for first-degree murder?
Yes, sir.
How was Shanterrica as a child?
I was proud of Shanterrica. She was the first one to go to college, and she an honor student. She took all honor classes when she was in high school. She's been on the honor roll since she was in the kindergarten.
Was she a good girl around the house?
Yes, sir. She's a very good girl.
Like your other two kids?
Yes, sir.
Those are my questions.
What's the examination?
Miss Madden, when did your daughter lose her glasses?
I'm not for sure, sir.
You don't know?
No, sir.
But she lost them.
Yes, sir.
Do you know when she told you she'd lost them?
She told me she lost them. I'm not for sure. I think it was the end of February.
End of February?
Yes, sir.
Sometime just shortly before this incident.
Yes, sir.
And I believe that you said that she called you in the afternoon 3 times. One time she was walking to her apartment.
Yes, sir.
And what did she tell you she was going to her apartment to do?
To wash her clothes to get packed for spring break.
Okay. And then she called you another time and told you she and Miss Stewart had been in a fight.
Yes, sir.
And did she tell you much about it?
No, sir.
And then but she definitely didn't tell you that Miss Stewart had been stabbed.
No, sir.
And then the third time she called was the incident involving Mr. Newman, and you told her to run.
Yes, sir.
And you said that her phone, at some point her phone went dead or cut off.
Yes, sir.
What was the longest conversation you had with her that afternoon?
I'm not for sure. I'm not for sure.
Okay. After the last call, what I'll say, the Nuna call, did you tried to call her back?
Yes, sir.
Did you get an answer?
No, sir.
And did she ever try to call you back, if you know?
I didn't get a phone call from her, but I did get one from a friend of hers.
And was that Miss Reese?
No. Carlisha.
Carlisha.
Yes.
And that's Carlisha Caldwell. Do you know did she tell you where she was when she called?
Did Carlisha tell me where Shanterrica was?
No, where Carlisha was calling from.
No, sir.
And did she tell you why she was calling you?
She was calling to tell me that Shanterrica was in the back of the police car.
Okay, so that's when you found out something had happened serious enough that the police were involved.
Yes, sir.
And you and your husband did come to Murfreesboro.
Yes, sir.
And do you know about what time it was when you arrived?
It was late. It was real late.
Would it have been a little before or after midnight?
After midnight.
After midnight. When did you found out from Mr. Taylor, Detective Taylor, that Miss Madden had been charged with first-degree murder?
When he come down the elevator, he said what she had been charged with. We asked him, what had she been charged with? And he said first-degree murder, and we asked him. He told us, he said, well, I know she didn't wake up this morning planning to kill someone, and he could tell that she was a good child.
And when did you or your husband or both of you retain Mr. Brandon?
When we was on our way down to Murfreesboro, and my husband was talking to his father, and his father told him something about Mr. Brandon.
Okay, so had you all talked to Mr. Brandon before you ever got here?
No, sir.
How long after it was that you talked to Mr. Taylor that you contacted Mr. Brandon?
Well, we had to call his father back to see who he was talking about, because we didn't know.
Would it be fair to say that by the next day, Mr. Brandon had been retained or was representing your daughter?
Yes.
Now, you mentioned that your daughter lived in Memphis, grew up in your home, you and your husband's home. She was an honor student, was she not?
Yes, sir, she was.
And received a Hope Scholarship, correct?
Yes, sir.
And did she make good grades her first semester at MTSU?
Yes, sir. She had 4 B's and 2 A's.
And she was taking 18 hours.
Yes, sir.
And you believe that she had the mental ability to make good grades and to take that many hours, did you not? How many hours did she take in the fall?
It's 16, 15,
16.
something.
Now, when was the first time you sat down and asked your daughter what happened?
We talk about it all the time.
And what has she told you happened?
And it was a fight.
And did she tell you how it came about?
I know it was something involving maybe marijuana.
Did you know your daughter was smoking marijuana when she was at MTSU?
My daughter never smoked marijuana while she was at home with us. But I'm not a naive parent. It could be.
I guess I'll put it this way. Had you known, you would, I'm sure, have tried to discourage us. Fair statement?
If I knew, she would have been at home with me.
And did she tell you about going to Miss Stewart's room?
The detective told me. Did she knocked on the door?
Has Miss Madden ever told you that?
She said she knocked on the door.
And did she tell you what happened when the door was open?
She said she knocked on the door, and when Miss Stewart opened the door, they was back and forth about why did she call the apartment complex on her, and that's why come she called the police on her.
Okay. And what did she tell you was the first physical part of this altercation?
Miss Stewart pushed her.
Pushed her in the back?
Pushed her, I wasn't there, but she pushed her and she fell in going in the hallway.
Fell into the hallway?
Yes, sir.
And then did she tell you what happened?
They was fighting and she tried to get her off of her.
And did she say she was down on the ground and Miss Stewart was on top of her?
Yes, sir.
and hitting her in the head,
Yes, sir.
and she had seen a knife earlier on the bed and reached up and got the knife. Is that what she told you?
That's not what
What did she tell you?
she said. She saw it, she felt it. She was trying to find something, and she had her hand.
Had her hand on the bed and felt the knife
Yes, sir.
and grabbed it.
Yes, sir.
And did she tell you where she stabbed Miss Stewart?
No, sir.
Did she tell you how she stabbed her?
No, sir.
She just told you that she'd stabbed her
Yes, sir.
one time,
Yes, sir.
and that Miss Stewart then fell on the floor and she got up and left the room. Is that correct?
No, sir.
Well, don't let me put words in your mouth.
Sorry. She said that she didn't know what to do. She didn't know what to do.
Did she tell you after she stabbed Miss
She has
Stewart
never
how
been
she
in a
got out
fight
of the
before.
room?
She has never been in a fight before. She didn't know what to do.
Okay. You mentioned that classes were out on Martin Luther King Day. I'm sorry, take your time. I'll have
Okay. Other questions, Mr. Brandon? Any question from our jury? Not saying anything, thank you, ma'am. You can step down.